This is the world according to Jen and Carolyn.
Hello. How are you today?
I'm good.
Yeah?
I'm really good.
It's a nice Sunday.
Great Sunday. Did some outdoor yoga at the beach.
Wow.
Very white woman today.
That is very white woman. I went for a hike at the beach.
Oh.
Yeah. And then I bought some plants.
I bought plant pots.
Oh, very cool. Look at us all nesting and stuff. Plants make your air all clean.
We're green witches today.
We are green witches
We're
today.
very nature witches and green witches.
And I need that clean air desperately because both my kid and my husband are diseased because 'tis the season.
It's not me this time.
It's not
It's
you
your family.
this time. But who knows? You were upstairs for like a total of 5 minutes.
I'm sure I'll have the flu after.
You probably picked it up. Yeah,
Probably.
for sure. But
I'm
that's
just
not
that bad.
That is not what we're here to talk about today. Today we're going to be talking about the fine art of thrifting.
I love thrifting.
I know, I do too. So hot right now. But before Macklemore quite literally sang the praises of procuring secondhand treasures, I friggin' love that song. Many of us were already in the picking game. Whether you're a high school kid looking for vintage 90s gear,
Oh, God.
or a person on a budget looking for a sweet deal, thrifting is a great way to acquire what you want and need without ridiculously high retail markup. So today we're going to talk about thrifting. We're going to talk about how buying brand new versus buying used has an impact on the planet and what that impact is.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Carolyn. So what about you? Do you have a thrift history to speak of?
Yes. I mean, I think it really started in, again, my teenage years.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad was big with Goodwill because, again, any good hoarder needs to continually be searching. So going to Goodwill, going to antique stores, toy fairs at the Cow Palace. I don't know if you've ever heard of those.
I know there are a lot of things that happen at the Cow Palace. I guess toy and gun fairs and the rodeo.
All three were a big part of my childhood.
Sweet.
And
he was a cowboy Jew?
Yeah, we loved the rodeo, and I love cowboys and all that stuff. We love the dog shows there,
cool.
and the cat shows.
Oh God,
we were everywhere. And much to my mom's disgust, he would buy home appliances and books, and a lot of my long lost gems. A lot of his long lost gems from childhood. I got all my Halloween costumes and school presentation outfits secondhand.
Nice.
So like when I had to dress up like Jane Goodall and Cleopatra, like my dad would take me to Goodwill and we would literally find like the best things.
It's more legit that way.
Absolutely. And people always were really impressed by it. And I think he secretly liked that we got it at a Goodwill. But as a teenager, I loved going to Haight Street because it was very counterculture, right? Just like all the other kids.
Things were affordable on Haight Street.
Well, exactly. And I could also get like things that my mom wouldn't have bought for me for cheap.
Yeah.
So like I was really into halter tops.
Oh,
and, all the stuff at Aardvarks and like 60s, 70s fashion.
Totally.
And as an adult, I kind of donate more. I'm not a huge shopper of vintage. It's a smell thing for me. It has to be a certain store. There's just something used smell. I'm very particular. But I still do get a thrill at an antique store or thrift store where I find something, especially if it's something from my childhood. That I got this. Like there's that nostalgia.
Yeah.
So how about you?
Oh my Lord. Thrifting is in my blood. So as you know, I grew up very low income, and my mom would always find the best stuff at thrift stores. And being an industrious lesbian, she could refinish furniture, reupholster stuff. So she found the best antique furniture, beautiful stuff. My house was like a museum. Like my flair for decor and decorating came from my mom.
That's pretty. I don't like doing all the refurbishing you have to do.
She was. If I could do it, I really want to learn how to refinish furniture. She was really good at it, and so we would go thrifting and when I was younger, I wasn't that into it because it was embarrassing because it was, we were lower income and, it was kind of a necessity thing. But when I got into my teens, that's where the Charles Manson, the sisterhood of the traveling Manson sweatshirt came from. And we stole it because we were all low income
Manson would have appreciated that.
He would have appreciated. He would have said something really wacky. And then now I collect antiques.
Yeah.
So it's a little more high-end thrifting.
Yeah.
And then, thrifting has changed significantly in terms of I can buy things on Poshmark and ThredUp.
Yeah.
And I'm huge on going to Poshmark.
And Marketplace.
And all those.
It's gone digital.
Yeah. I got a Banana Republic velvet mini skirt last night, worn twice for $15 on Poshmark.
See, that's good.
Love it.
Does this count as thrifting? Like, sometimes you're driving around town and you'll see, like, street furniture.
That is not thrifting. That's you're a freegan. Fucking freegan, man.
What's that?
I don't know. You're picking things. Well, freegan, I've heard, is like dumpster diving.
Oh, God, I don't do that.
Dude, I'm going to dumpster dive, and I've come very close. Where you're like, oh, shit, dude, Safeway's throwing away this, like, bread. I'm going to take it.
Jen, I'll buy you bread.
No, I'm okay now.
Oh, okay.
Back in the day, I'm not experiencing extreme financial hardship at this point in my life. I'm solidly middle class. But when I was younger, we used to go to the grocery outlet.
Oh, yeah.
Which was not cool back then. Now it's cool.
Because that's
find
jingle.
Dope shit.
Yeah.
But back in the day, it was called like the factory second store, or my mom called it the canned food store.
Oh.
Hood shit.
Yeah, I love
Welcome to the hood. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Jen's low-income upbringing. We are going to give you a brief history from this Time article about thrifting. Carolyn, to start, did you know there's a National Thrift Shop Day?
No.
It's August 17th, in case you were curious. Mark your calendars,
Do they give a
bitches.
discount?
I don't know.
I would want to know
You
that.
would. But yeah, so mark your calendars. But back in the old days, we didn't throw shit away. You want a new dress in the middle of the Civil War? You better grab them curtains, Scarlett O'Hara, because you couldn't go to the store. See, you had to make some curtains.
What's Maria have to make play clothes for the Von Trapp children with curtains too?
God, I don't remember. I've never seen The Sound of Music.
What?
I'm triggered by Nazis. Anyway.
There's music and there's the help.
And Favorite Things is one of my favorite Christmas songs.
How have you not seen this?
I know.
Christmas?
I don't know.
Your child needs to see this. It's really long.
It's going to happen this year. It's going to happen.
Can I be there?
Yes,
we should go do the sing-along one at the Castro Theater.
Once I learn all the music, I will.
Okay.
Yeah. It'll be good. So let's skip to the Industrial Revolution, which introduced mass production of clothing, changing the game. The more affordable it became to buy new clothes, made by children back in the Industrial Revolution, the more people thought of clothes as disposable. Moving to cities equals less room. So you got to throw more shit away, especially when the waste management system improves. Tony Soprano. But yeah, just waste management in general. But there was a stigma attached to wearing used clothes that had been owned by a stranger. Used clothes were often available from push carts, predominantly started by Jewish immigrants. Maybe that's why your dad loved it. Whose professional options were often constrained by anti-Semitism. Boo! In May 3rd, 1884, there was an issue of the Saturday Evening Post that ran a satirical story about a girl who got smallpox from a dress she bought from a Jewish-owned resale shop. Hilarious!
There.
Jesus. Yeah. So anyway, from anti-Semitism, we go into organized resale efforts that were born out of the Salvation Army. Their Salvage Brigade launched in 1897 out of a basement of a men's shelter. Residents went around the neighborhood with push carts asking for used clothes, and they got food and lodging in return. And a Methodist minister launched Goodwill, a similar operation in Boston in 1902. And they hired poor and disabled folks to collect goods and do necessary repairs. In turn, the offerings for sale in those groups shops gave immigrants a place to find clothes and become Americanized. By the way, Goodwill is still out there doing the work. We fund Goodwill, and my God, they work with the reentry population, folks coming out of prison, folks with disabilities, low income folks,
job training, everything you can think of.
They are our one of our job centers.
Wow.
Yeah, they're amazing.
And doesn't it not just in the retail store, but even in the factory side?
Yeah, everywhere. Yeah. And they help people get jobs elsewhere, not just in Goodwill, because the job training is extensive. I love Goodwill. I only donate to Goodwill. Yeah. Salvation Army has some
weird
anti-abortion stuff.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm always I remember a company I once worked for did a big fundraising thing with them, and someone had mentioned something about them, and I never bothered to look at it.
They tug on my heartstrings out there at Christmas with the bell and shit. Yeah. But I've heard, correct me if I'm wrong, audience, that they have some anti-abortion stuff going on.
There's some things, yeah.
Goodwill? No way. So I love me some Goodwill. So by 1920s, thrift stores were organized as department stores. By 1935, there were nearly 100 Goodwill stores nationwide, and thrift stores made up half of the Salvation Army's annual budget by the time the 1929 stock market crashed. So in 1950s, it was a time of plenty. So there were more donations. Consignment shops catering to high-end clientele started to emerge in the 50s. Wealthier consumers started coveting, vintage clothes. Now it's cool, right? We call it vintage. It's still used shit with a fancy name. Yeah. So in the 21st century, shoppers don't have to leave their home. They can browse and buy luxury consignment and secondhand wares on online websites like I mentioned them already, The RealReal and ThredUp.
There's so many.
I love it. I cannot afford legitimate brand new Louboutins.
Yeah.
I do not have $1,000 to throw on shoes. But
they're
only
find 700, Jen.
Oh, Jesus. They can go really high. Anyway, so all my fancy shoes, all the ones I've gotten have been wonderful. So
you're good with shoes, but none of them are used shoes, are they?
No, they are worn. They are.
Oh, so I can't do feet.
Oh, I don't mind. They all look great. They've been worn a couple of times.
Isn't there like a word if it has a tag on, or there's layers
new without tags, or new with tags, or...
And people are pretty honest about it, I find.
Yes. And places like Poshmark, for instance, I did get a pair of Louboutins that reeked of cigarette smoke. Gross. I immediately put them back in the box, wrote to customer service and said, this is the issue. They refunded my money.
That's awesome.
No questions asked.
Good customer service.
But that was the only bad experience. I bought so many clothes.
You're pretty good at buying stuff from
I love it. So today thrift stores are part of a $14.4 billion industry. Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy. I didn't know
and
that.
as studies on consumer preferences, they suggest that millennials like to shop with companies that donate to charities. I love that. So what is it about thrifting that's so thrilling? Carolyn, could you read us the top 5 reasons why people thrift? Brought to you by Sammy D Thrifting.
Well, my only problem with Sammy D's thrifting post is he makes this really kind of... analogy, it's an addiction, which I'm like, you ought to be really careful and you throw that
That's
word
very
around,
true.
Right? But, so this 2023 article is kind of satirical commentary. And he makes this connection between what I do think is sort of an addictive nature of the pleasure of thrifting, which releases, and whenever you have pleasure in something, you release dopamine and its friend glutamate. So glutamate's actually a really interesting one. I don't think I've ever talked about it on the show.
I don't think so.
So glutamate is like dopamine's, like if dopamine's the executive director, glutamate is like his exec assistant.
Is that sugar?
That's glucose.
Okay.
Glutamate is is another neurotrope that it kind of has a memory to it.
Oh,
so the example would be like when you're packing for a trip and you start getting excited, that's glutamate kind of going, hey, when you get your suitcase out, that means you're not going to work. And that means you're going to like sit on the beach and like drink cocktails and shit and stuff like that. So glutamate kind of has that memory that comes with dopamine, which is why sometimes you don't actually have to be having the trigger in front of you to be having a dopamine release.
Interesting.
So, little science there. So anyway, so this idea of kind of the experience in the aftermath of thrifting is typically a positive experience. So here's the 5 reasons. I'll list them and then I'll talk a little bit about them. So thrifting gives us a thrill because it's therapeutic. There's a concept called fashion equity.
Okay. Finding
treasure, bragging rights, and for savings. So for savings is pretty obvious. Right. I'm not going to go into that one. Like basically you can find shit that's less expensive. And I've also read things about like antique roadshow style stuff where people found something at a garage sale or at a thrift store and it ends up being worth like millions of dollars.
That's the dream. Every time I pick up some old fucking painting, I'm like, this is going to be the $1 million ticket.
This is an original Picasso.
Yeah, like I'm ever going to drag the shit to Antiques Roadshow. But going to Antiques Roadshow is a fucking goal.
Is it really?
Oh,
I did not know this about you.
100%. My sister-in-law, they were going to be at Filoli Gardens or whatever, and she sent me, she's like, girl, they're coming. I was like, oh, shit, you have to win tickets, because everybody wants to go.
No, I love learning new things about Jen.
It's on my bucket list.
Cool. Yeah. So for therapy, so again, it's often said that shopping is cheaper than a psychiatrist, not necessarily.
Yes.
But yeah, you get that same feel-good endorphin. You're kind of aimlessly, I would say sort of mindlessly wandering through, kind of whether it's for a purposeful hunt or you're just going in there. So it's pleasurable and you're disconnecting and you're getting to there's a sensory experience. You're getting to use kind of your sensory resourcing when you're doing this stuff, which is why I find shopping and even just going to the grocery store, Walgreens and entertaining. Yeah. This is a big one though, fashion equity. And I think this is the one that we're going to kind of dig into a little deeper. Mm-hmm. But thrifting, this is a quote from the article, thrifting is almost like the ultimate fashion equalizer. No matter where we live or who we are, we can still find and be found by gorgeous, quote, expensive things. You'll see and have the opportunity to coexist with pieces of fashion, which otherwise would be out of your reach via any other mainstream outlets. That reminds me of what you were saying about the Louboutins. There's that fashion kind of hierarchy that, again, Louboutins come with a certain, je ne sais quoi, whatever you want to call it.
Totally.
So the fact that sort of I can have this and I didn't spend the amount on it. So again, fashion really is for anyone, and thrifting, well, it should be. Thrifting makes that possible.
Fashion is for everyone. And I think the beautiful thing about living in San Francisco versus like living in Beverly Hills is fashion is so independent and so creative, and it doesn't hinge on having the most expensive shit.
No. Yeah. It's art. When I see someone in a wonderful outfit that's just interesting, I'm like, I love what you did there. It's like you are a walking piece of art. Mm-hmm. So this is a big one I think that was always interesting for my dad, was for treasure. And for me too, I'm always looking for certain pieces. Yeah. Like I mentioned on the show, like I'm always looking for like old, psych textbooks, old, bottles of apothecary shit, that stuff like that. So finding treasure, it's a hunt, is real, and you can do that with fashion. It's not, also the idea of a thrift store, it's not curated. No. When you go into a department store, it's same, mass produced, everything. There's sort of a season, there's a trend. This is not curated. It's all about the hunt.
I love the beauty of it's not disorganization. Things are artfully arranged, but in a maximalist way. Mm-hmm. And I'm a maximalist, I love it.
So see, sometimes I can find it overwhelming because the hunt, I need things to be picked out a little bit. Oh, like I'm more likely to pick out an outfit they put on a mannequin.
Oh, interesting.
Than I would go. But again, if I have time, rifling through stuff is very relaxing. And then this is the biggest one: bragging rights, pride. I paid less money for this shit, and you paid more, son. Like sucker, right? And I also think this is funny. There's always a memory or a story that comes with it. Like, it's like, hey, where'd you get that? Goodwill. And it was on, or I bought this at this like tiny little store up in, Big Sur, that it was just the side of the road or wherever, like Santa Rosa, like somewhere where I just popped in and found this, or something like for my travels. I always like to go to an antique store and be like, oh, I got this in New Orleans. Yeah. I love this piece of art. Totally. It was $15. Yep. So anyway, so I will also add that I think a big sell, and we talked about this a little bit, is for youth and adolescents to do this because it's social. Mm-hmm. You're actually being unique. Yes. And it's inexpensive. Yep. And the biggest thing is it comes in all sizes.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
So you're in all brands. You're not like when teens are kind of getting into that stage and they're all wearing the same thing. I'm like, oh, so you think you're an original, huh? Yeah. Yeah. Like 200 million people have your brandy medal.
Not only are they wearing the same thing, they're wearing the same things we wore in high school now. I'm like, that really?
Just means we're old.
Your 90s baggy jeans? Fuck you. Also, I don't bust my ass to be fit to wear jeans that swallow me whole. Don't be as hot right now, and I'm leaning into it because I don't want to be unhip.
It's called baggy, Jen.
Oh, God. Where's my wallet chain and my fucking oversized flannel? But whatever.
You know what's good, though? When you hang on to your Doc Martens from the 90s.
I wish I had.
I did, and they came back in style.
Oh, yeah.
Never wear them.
I had to go buy a new pair. I wish I had kept mine. Jesus. So, back to thrifting. Another reason people like thrifting is because they love a good deal. We touched on this briefly. Mm-hmm. I get this. I got a beautiful painting on Facebook Marketplace a couple of weeks ago for $20, and I looked it up. It's worth over $200.
And that's bragging rights.
Right? That's the shit that really pumps my nads, as Bender in the Breakfast Club said. I love that shit.
Yeah.
Love it.
There's your dopamine.
It is. I can feel it surging
it's a high.
through my veins.
But also, and you saved money.
Yeah.
And you got something that you love.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is great. This
is social.
A forever piece. Well, it was cool. It was social in the sense that I found it on Marketplace, and the woman who sold it to me was really sweet.
Yeah.
I got to listen to her, not life story necessarily, but this was a beautiful house. And
I'd be like, I just want your picture. Stop talking.
Oh, I'm so fascinated by people. And that is one of the things I absolutely love about Marketplace is, you know, this woman's telling me how this is her uncle's house and that she's been entrusted to sell everything because she's the one that took care of him when he was aging, and how this woman who they hired to be his caretaker, like, deliberately put a rice cooker in the middle of the kitchen because she knew he'd trip over it. And then he broke his hip, and then she had control of everything.
My God.
And
my
I'm
therapist mind is like, stop talking.
Yeah. I'm eating it up. I'm like, what else you got, bitch? Everything's got price tags on it. I'm just like, but she was also fascinating, and I could tell she was a really sweet person, maybe a bit lonely. Yeah. So the 15 minutes that I was there, like, rifling through her awful
did a good
stuff,
deed.
Yeah, it feels like a mitzvah. Like, I gave you a little companionship. I took a painting off your hands that you should have sold for a lot more. I almost felt like I was cheating the woman. I owed her at minimum a conversation.
That was nice of you. See, I would have charged her.
I try. I know. Well, that's your job.
My fees.
Right. I work for the government. I'm just a bleeding heart. So anyway, but you know, that deep-seated desire to find a deal, I learned might actually be genetic, which is crazy. Carolyn, tell us more about what psychology says.
I again always appreciate learning something new. I did not know this. Thank you to Robert Scheindler, Vishal Leah, and Colleen Corcoran.
Yeah.
They talk about a concept. Have you ever heard of deal prowess?
No.
It sounds very like cat-like.
Yeah.
So you could read more about this in Intergenerational Influence and Customer Deal Prowess, an article in the Journal of Psychology and Marketing from 2014. Deal prowess is defined as customer responsiveness to retail sales promotions, rebates, coupons, sales, offers, gifts, contests, even using the word free. Like sometimes I'll let y'all in on a little secret. I'll fuck with her listener and I'll go free podcast, like free listen for free.
Yeah.
Because that automatically, just seeing the word free clicks something on this deal.
I count on you for the psychology shit, man. Give us more listeners.
You know, so these authors, Scheindler, Vishal, and another person, Jeanette Taylor, wrote an article based on this deal prowess, published in the Journal of Association for Consumer Research, that makes a more startling claim that deal prowess may have actual hereditary components. So if you basically, being born to shop isn't just a catchphrase, right?
Interesting.
And they actually did this by looking at twins. It was a really small study.
Yeah.
But deal prowess is conveyed from generation, is basically passed along from generation to generation, just like trauma.
Yeah, I was thinking that. That's exactly what I was thinking.
You can get the bad, if you're going to be mad about getting the bad stuff, you got to be happy about getting the good stuff, right? And so when children observe and model their parents' behavior, it makes more sense. But I think also that's a nature nurture thing too. Like, this is such a weird thing, but my mom used to always buy us at Easter time. We'd get in our Easter basket a new bathing suit, a pair of Seychelles sandals until we wanted little heels,
practical,
and a spring dress.
Oh, I
like that. We'd go to Macy's downtown to the flower, when they did the flower thing.
Yes.
And we'd go eat at like a special restaurant. My mom would basically like take my sister and I out on a date to go do this. And to this day, when it's spring, I still do that. I get a bathing suit, a pair of sandals, and a spring dress.
Aww.
I know. And so, yes, that was ingrained in me from my mom, but also it's just something we did. So there's this memory to it. So I do think that this has some truth to it.
Totally.
But yeah, there definitely is this, you know, I also think there can go the other way if you have an aversion to it.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, kind of the smell.
Yep.
Like my dad would bring home stuff and think it was so great. And it would just have this stink. And he'd be like, it's great. Don't you want to wear this outfit?
Yeah.
And my mom would be like, my daughters are not wearing used clothes.
Well, you were overwhelmed by it too because your dad was a hoarder. And so anything associated with that, you're like, oh, no, that triggers something in me, which is completely, totally reasonable.
Yeah. So,
interesting.
Proudness.
I want to find my long lost brother to see if he also loves vintage shit. Yeah.
Well, but don't you think you got that from your mom?
I don't know. What if I got it? I mean, I think I did, but what if my dad is like that as well? Who knows? Also Jewish. the peddler shit could have been passed on, right? These are the mysteries when your mom's a lesbian and decides to go to a bar and randomly seek out a guy to impregnate her, unbeknownst to him. And oh, surprise, he's already got another family.
Oopsies.
Oops, and I've got a brother out there somewhere. So
you can hear this whole story in I think we did.
We did. It's one of our shorties. Yeah. I don't remember.
We didn't publish.
Yes.
But then we excerpt it.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember. But you'll find, if you want to find it, you'll find it.
It's a great story.
I don't know about you, but I always feel like a better person when I buy used shit. Mm-hmm. And that's because I know my money didn't go to a corporation that uses like sweatshop labor and shit, and because I'm keeping something out of a landfill. So, you know, let's take a look at the clothing industry specifically. I think we could look at almost any industry, but we're going to look at the clothing industry and examine just how bad it is for people and the planet. So this is from a 2023 Roundup article entitled The 17 Most Worrying Textile Waste Stats and Facts. So, all right, here we go. The world produces 92 million tons of textile waste every year. China produces 20 million tons. The U.S. produces 17 million tons. Clothing and textiles currently make up at least 7% of the total amount of waste in global landfill space. Between 80 and 100 billion new clothing garments are produced globally every year. 87% of the materials and fibers used to make clothing will end up in either incinerators or landfills. Only 20% of discarded textiles are collected. Only 1% of clothes will get recycled into new garments. Now, my husband needs to listen to this shit because he wants to give away his old chonies with fucking stains in them. And he's like, oh, if the Goodwill doesn't want them, they'll just donate them to these car companies that use them as insulation to stuff car seats. I'm like, bitch, they don't do that anymore. I'm like, that is not, nobody's using your nasty, shit-stained old chonies to stuff the seats of a caddy, bitch. So I slowly.
I don't want that, but they do. With
I don't want
jeans.
that car. Do they?
Maybell says they do with jeans.
All right,
that's like their whole thing. Like if you bring a pair of used jeans in, they will take 20% off your order.
I feel like there's more you can do with denim than old chonies with like holes blasted into them with violent farting.
Gross.
So let's talk about not my husband's ass,
gross,
but the global fashion
and
industry
women that do that are gross too.
Yeah, we're all disgusting. Yeah, I'm not trying to act like I'm not. So up to 100 billion garments are produced by the fashion industry every year, and each year as much as 92 million tons of clothing end up in landfills. Only 20% of textiles are collected for reuse or recycling globally. Almost 60% of all clothing material is actually plastic.
Yes.
Nylon, acrylic, and polyester textiles are just a few examples of these synthetic fibers that have become so ubiquitous in our wardrobes. Textile production generates 42 million tons of plastic waste per year, making the textile industry the second highest industrial sector after packaging.
That's what I had heard, that they're the number 2 worst offender in global
plastic production
and waste.
Yep.
And what's it called? Carbon footprint.
Yeah.
The amount of water it takes to make a pair of jeans.
I mean, we talk about fast fashion. I mean, I can't afford, I think they're called Weiss or Wise. I want a pair of those jeans so badly. They're all made in the US. I think it's all like recycled material.
Yeah.
I think they're about $200 a pop though. I can't afford that.
Yeah.
And so that's why I tend to gravitate toward places like Poshmark, where I'm like, I know my size in Levi's.
Yeah.
I could buy these Levi's new.
Yeah.
Or used rather than new. You know, I know my size in Madewell.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's all about going to the stores, figuring out what my size is, and then finding these things on Poshmark for half the price and no waste.
Yes.
Or I'm not.
It's so minimal.
Right. Yeah. Comparatively speaking.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not contributing to new waste.
Yes.
I'm buying the old waste.
Yeah.
So you get what we're talking about here. Textiles and fashion waste account for 9% of annual microplastic pollution added to our oceans. That's so sad. So the U.S., we already talked about how much the U.S. generates. So, you know, this is about 112 pounds per person, according to the last census statistics in waste. In the U.S., 66% of all unwanted clothes and textiles are landfilled. Less than 15% are recycled. The rest are burned, which is great for our atmosphere.
Do you remember hearing about, it's a landfill, I think it's Ghana. It's somewhere in Africa, and it's like a clothing mountain.
Yeah.
And people go there to just sift through, and it's all like Forever 21.
Yeah.
It was in there was a Netflix documentary about fast fashion.
Yeah.
And all this stuff.
I'm not surprised. You know what trips me up or trips me out is when there's images of developing countries where poverty is really extreme, and there's kids rolling around in shirts that are like, you know, NFC champion, 49ers, and it's like the Niners didn't win.
Yes.
But the shirts and the hats and everything get produced in the event that they do win. I'm like, God damn it, one more reason I hate the NFL. I know, the Niners are like right now.
Right this second. Sorry.
Go Niners, go
Whatever.
Niners. But, you know, that's just waste that we're talking about. I care about the environmental impact that the industry has on the planet, but I also really care about human rights. In fact, it's what my master's degree is in. So that said, I think it's important that we spend some time talking about the conditions that a lot of folks who make clothes work in. So let's start with defining what a sweatshop is. I think most of us know what a sweatshop is, but just in case you don't know, it's a factory or workshop, especially in the clothing industry, where manual workers are employed at very low wages for long hours and typically under poor conditions. This is from a Forbes article. I think many folks assume that these sweatshops exist only in China or Mexico, but LA, not China, is where China too, but Americans in LA put in grueling 12-hour days. They make garments that will be sold for anywhere from $5 to $75 for around 3 cents a piece paid out.
How is that legal?
Because I'm going to get into it. And this is about exploitation. The lofty goal of making what amounts to $5 an hour is in reality a pipe dream for them. So the majority of sweatshop workforce is unsurprisingly comprised of undocumented immigrants who are left with few other choices for work. According to the California Bureau of Labor Statistics, of the over 46,000 individuals who make up Los Angeles' second largest industry, the so-called cut and sew labor force, a whopping 71% are immigrants, many of whom are undocumented. So they can't appeal to anybody. They're worried about being sent back to where they come from.
So how does the company explain if they pay them in cash?
They pay them under the table, or if they have an ITIN. So an ITIN allows you to work. I don't know a ton about this. I should know more, but an ITIN allows you to work. So a lot of times with an ITIN, they'll be like, okay, you're employable.
Yeah.
And so that's how they work, but they exploit them because these folks are like, well, shit, I'm afraid to complain.
Sure.
Because I'm worried about being deported.
And where's the oversight for this company that's producing?
That's the problem.
What's the IRS saying, hey, you're making a lot of money. How are you doing?
Well, that's the problem. Look at, NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, for instance, made these they're called maquiladoras, and they're in, I think, Juarez, Mexico, and a few other places. It's primarily women who work there. And they're treated, one step above slaves.
Yeah.
It's fucking terrible. But because of these trade agreements that exist between the US, Mexico, and Canada, our country economically relies on that exploitation. We don't give a shit. Yeah. This is why we buy things from China.
Yeah.
Or China, I think we are the largest importer of Chinese goods because we're like, oh, cool. We can make this in China because they don't have the same environmental regulations that we now do. We used to not have these regulations either. We had our industrial revolution. Mm-hmm. China did not have the opportunity to have that. Now they're producing things without environmental oversight. So we're like, fuck it. Let them pollute their economy. We'll buy all their cheap goods. Yeah. Let them exploit their workers. We'll buy all their cheap goods.
Which is really just booming ourselves because it's polluting our world.
Of course, it's like we're not fucking connected. Like we don't share the same air and water. It makes zero sense.
Yeah.
So anyway, I can go on a tangent about this all day. But we're going to look at Fashion Nova. Have you heard of Fashion Nova?
I have not.
Okay. So Fashion Nova is a major company. And the New York Times broke a story a couple of years ago about this clothing company operating sweatshops in LA. Very few people freaked out. And Forbes posits that this is because when someone sees an item that is made in America, and I'm guilty of this as well, we wrongly assume that it's made with fair labor practices. It's directly supporting American businesses that are ethical, that even if it's cheap, it's somehow thanks to a loophole and not shady production. Wrong.
Sounds like American thinking.
Yeah. By union made, and you'll know that people are treated fairly and making a living wage. That is the only way, really. Using influencers to promote fast fashion is a big thing. This is also from Forbes. Fashion Nova has tapped into a gold mine. They've jumped on influencer marketing that creates an aspirational aesthetic that is actually attainable. So you're like, oh, I can't necessarily afford what the Kardashians are wearing because they're buying high-end items, but this is a lookalike. This is cool. Oh, and the Kardashians are promoting it? Dope.
Yeah.
You know, so Carolyn.
Wait, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course.
You know, like when something says like this is certified fair trade, can we rely on that?
Yes. Yes,
really?
because
I'm so scared.
I think you can, and now I'm speaking out of my ass, but I'm almost positive that in order to be certified fair trade, there are certain metrics that you absolutely have to meet. Just like in order to be certified organic, you have to jump through a lot of
just
necessary
like certified USDA. Because the meat industry is real. You can't trust anything.
I know.
I'm going to start knitting and crocheting my own shit.
Yes, you're going to have to.
I'll make your son help me.
Yes, we're going to send him to school and busted ass crocheted sweaters. It's going to be great.
Your aunt made this for you. You wear it.
To wear it. Yes, pink bunny suit.
I was just going to say, yeah. Okay, so I know what you're going to ask me. Why do we think, and I said, like, that sounds like American thinking. Like, yes, these are deplorable conditions.
Why are we okay with it?
Well, number one, I think most people genuinely don't know.
Okay.
And like I said.
You think even in this day and age? Like, we grew up in the Nike scandal where that's really where the sweatshop thing broke wide open.
I think that with everything coming inundating us, there's too many things to worry about. I think some people just go, fuck it. I'm in the moment. I can't fucking be thinking about all this shit.
Also, if you're low income. Like, my mom shops at Walmart. They're terrible fucking union busters. They're a terrible company.
But that's probably all that's there, though.
And, well, my mom has lots of options in Denver, but financially, she does not.
So, you know, I want to at least give some credence to, I think some people don't bother to understand this. But this is a 2022 article written at the University of Tasmania. And we're going to get into some deep psychology here right now. This is taking me back to grad school here. Basically what we're doing is we're making brain excuses.
Okay.
So cognitive faculties, when I say that word, I'm really talking about how your prefrontal cortex, which is kind of what makes us the apex predator in this, you know, culture and economy, right? So cognitive faculties are a distinguishing feature of our humanity, lifting humankind out of caves, enabling language, art, science, but it's also rooted in and subject to influence, bias, emotions, and instincts. Okay. And again, those can be used for good. It can be used for evil. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about three things here. One is self-concept. And that is basically our perceptions. So you know those photos like of, it's like the old lady.
Oh, yeah.
I forget what the name of that is.
Do you see a young woman
or an old woman?
lady?
Or like, do you see the horse or do you see the cow?
Yeah.
So our perceptions, that ability, again, this idea of who we are is also, again, that means physically, emotionally, socially, spiritually, all the isms. And in terms of any other aspect that makes up who we are, and this is usually formed young in life, but it does evolve across the lifespan, which is why we want to be exposed to as many different things as possible. Sure. So this isn't self-concept is not related to self-esteem.
Okay.
Self-concept is I'm a good person or I'm a good consumer because by buying this, I'm helping create jobs.
Okay.
And the concept that this article from the University of Tasmania talks about is that people often will say, well, at least it's a job. They have to do something. At least they made $5. Therefore, I'm not a bad person because my bad thing kind of helps a greater good. I see. Which is kind of moral relativism, right? In reverse. So most of us are so distant from the supply chain exploitation and the kind of the dirtiness of fashion. Yeah. And like to what your point is, I don't think people are bothering to investigate. Right.
It's in our own backyard.
Well, being, again, when everything with Trump came out, going, oh, I'm going to choose Lowe's instead of Home Depot. Mm-hmm. Or actually, I'm going to choose my local hardware store over any of this because I want to support this. We are so hooked on scoring a bargain and all those things I talked about at the beginning, like, hey, I'm getting a deal. This is a thrill. I'm happy. Dopamine. Woo! We're not really thinking about the naughtiness of the retail brand. And then if we're not allowing ourselves to think that, it's not going to change any behavior. So consumption is in and of itself an individualistic act. Mm-hmm. It allows us to distinguish ourselves through our clothing, our culture, our, the entertainment we consume, even the food we eat. That's very individualistic. Yeah. And ethical consumption is when customers, consumers consider the wider environmental and societal impacts of what they consume, including where, when, and how they purchase clothing. Yep. So I had never heard of this before, but the article highlights something called Oxfam's Naughty and Nice List. Have you ever heard of that? No. I ended up looking it up, and it basically names and shames retail brands that fail to disclose which factories they source their product from. Okay. And, again, we should be looking at this for everything. Your food, your medicine, everything we're doing. But anything you put on your body or in your body, don't you want to know where it came from?
Ideally.
There's a mindfulness to that. Yeah. That means you actually have to be present. And I do have an appreciation that most people just don't fucking have the time.
And there's a privilege to it. Mm-hmm. Because if you're shopping at Erewhon in LA, hi Blanca, you can afford to do that. Yeah. And that's the problem. The mass-produced, poorly produced things that aren't typically good for us are the more affordable things. And I can't blame the average consumer for buying what they can afford to buy to feed their families.
Well, and if you are in a low socioeconomic status, that's all that might be available. Totally. To you. You're not going to be thinking about, should I go get, organic food or can I go get McDonald's?
Are you going to take your WIC dollars to Whole Foods?
No.
Or are you going to go to Grocery Outlet or Smart and Final or any of these places that sell things uber cheap? Mm-hmm. You're going to stretch that dollar.
Well, and so really then what we're talking about here, we're not speaking to that population necessarily.
Of course not. These are people who can make different choices.
Yes. And so we have to be able to have our logic as consumers, and again, if a brand isn't disclosing or if there isn't ethical sourcing strategies going on, put your money where your mouth is.
For sure.
Because that is what is going to count. There's another concept called illusions of objectivity. So this I found really interesting. Our brains are wired to arrive at conclusions that we prefer.
Yep.
As long as we maintain the illusion of objectivity.
That makes sense.
And we do this even when there's evidence contrary to our beliefs. Does this remind you of cults a little bit?
And confirmation bias.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's inconsiderable evidence, like more journals than I could name, that people are more likely to arrive at a conclusion that they want to arrive at. Yeah. But their ability to do so is constrained by their ability to construct seemingly reasonable justifications for their conclusions. So again, check out A Case for Motivated Reasoning, written by Ziva Kunda in the Psychological Bulletin, if you want to read more about this.
Okay.
I'm going to talk a little bit about what motivational reasoning is.
Mm-hmm.
So motivated reasoning is a cognitive and social response. So again, a function of our thoughts and how we behave around other people. It is a process in which individuals consciously or unconsciously allow emotion-loaded motivational biases to affect how information is perceived. Mm-hmm. And we tend to, in general, I don't know if you experience this, but favor arguments that support a current belief system.
Of course.
And are going to reject new information that might, in our mind, the perception is it's contradicting that
confirmation bias.
So motivated reasoning is a way for individuals to avoid cognitive dissonance, which I talked about in the cult thing. And really what I'm hearing now is discomfort.
Yeah.
I don't want to feel bad. Yep. I want my dopamine. Yep. I want my Brandy Melville. I want my Abercrombie and Fitch or whatever all those things are. So we don't want to experience discomfort. So I don't want to think about the sad, immigrants while I'm buying something. Yep. And I want it now. Yep. So I'll feel good. Yep. And we, again, this is basically a part of our self-concept, going back to that original thought, and it's selfish at the end of the day. So the best way I can make it a good example of this is thinking about climate change. Mm-hmm. So, again, if I had to think about all the impact of that and little me, I'll also go into the space of, well, it's just me. Yeah. It's just me. It's just one person, but you have to, good philosophy is and good ethics is you have to take that maxim and say, but what if everyone thinks like that?
That's right.
And would that be good for the greater
That's
good?
Right.
And it's not, I am not an individual. I am part of an ecosystem.
Absolutely.
And that is what we need to start doing. And individuals who engage in motivated reasoning get to avoid that discomfort and that experience. And it's not good.
Yep.
So we got some work to do.
Interesting. And it reminds me, we just watched not a documentary, I'm sorry. It was a movie, but it's based on real life events called Dumb Money. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've heard of this, but there was this guy, I can't remember his name, but he's freaking amazing. He's absolutely hilarious. And he was like, I'm going to invest in GameStop.
Oh, I did see this. It just didn't catch my interest.
Yeah, I'm going to invest in you need to watch it. It's amazing. Okay. They did such a good job. And he started, and this was during the pandemic when everybody's at their computers, and for many, it's their only connection to the outside world, right? And he's like, hey, everybody invest in GameStop. And he had, really entertaining videos, and he himself was hilarious, and all these people started investing in GameStop. Well, these hedge funds do something called shorting. I'm not going to go into it, especially since I don't think I could do it. I don't think I'd do it justice explaining it.
Hedge fund.
Anyway.
I'm thinking about gardening now.
It's totally, right? It's totally bullshit, illegitimate, like Wall Street, just like making up rules and fucking people and fucking companies. But these folks collectively got together and they're like, hold the line. We're not going to sell our shares. Hold the line. And they're either sweating and they're like, fuck, dude, if this main guy who's telling us to hold the line is up like $17 million or whatever, and he isn't selling, we aren't going to either. And it's just fascinating to me because that story really exemplifies how if people collectively make a decision to do something that butts up against what most people accept or don't even understand, because most of us, including myself, don't understand what's going on Wall Street. But when you're making an impact. Yeah. And collectively, Wall Street is now paying attention. They're like, oh, shit. We almost lost our shirts because the everyday person, day traders, decided collectively that they were going to hold the fucking line. Nice. And to me, that story just shows the power of the people at the bottom. Us. Yeah. We are at the bottom. Yeah. We are not the 1%. We are not the ones making the rules. And so even small decisions that we make on a daily basis, like where to purchase our food, what kind of food we're going to purchase. Oh, I want a new pair of shoes. Well, I can get this this pair of shoes that was worn once for half the price, and I'm not buying something new. That's ultimate. Well, it's all going to go into a landfill, but fuck, you know, at least you're not buying new.
No way.
You are, and to me too, like I have been selling a lot of stuff on Facebook Marketplace, and I've been buying a lot of stuff on Facebook Marketplace, and not only have I met incredible people, but I know the money is going into their pocket just as it's going into my pocket. We are not supporting.
No tax.
Well, as long as I don't get caught. I'm like, put a little pizza emoji so people think you're paying me for food. But yeah, it's really like the person to person economy, which I think is so dope and harkens back to a simpler time when we bartered and we purchased things from each other. Yes. I love that so much more when I buy from a small business or I buy from a person who in their backyard in Bernal Heights, 10 minutes from my house, is selling plants and ceramic pots, and I'm like, I'm buying from you and not Home Depot.
Well, and it's this idea in Nomadland. I don't know if you've read that book, and it's a great movie too. But you know, these camping communities and these trailer owners, they have a kind of a rummage area, and everything's you take and you give. Yeah. And it's that same mentality, you know, okay, I don't need these plates anymore, but I really need a lemon zester. Yep. And, you know, again, it's going back to the origins of thrifting, which is, I don't need this anymore, but it still has value. Yes. And someone else can have it. Yeah. And you look at where we are within plastics and within all these things, not just clothes. Nothing's special anymore.
No. It's all mass produced.
Even my couple $100 phone is no big deal because I'm going to, trade it in for another one.
Everybody's got a computer in their pocket these days.
And again, I'm part of the problem, obviously.
We all are.
I think when we talk about the psychology of it, it's this aspect of, well, I am just one person, but we are collective.
Well, it's like Oscar Schindler at the end of Schindler's List, where he's like,
you're going deep with Schindler.
I know, dude.
God damn it.
Our Jewish roots. I've only watched it once because that's all I can handle, so I'm tapping back into people. Right. My 15-year-old memory, because that's the last time I watched it. I have no desire to watch it again because it was deeply traumatic. But yeah, he's one person. Yep. And he thinks, I could have done more, but my God, what he did for the people that he did it for. Yes. He changed their lives, their families' lives forever. And granted, buying used clothes is not the same as saving our people from fucking certain death.
But that concept that you're talking about is what empowers people in the state that our country's in, where you're not just one person.
Nope.
Because you're not alone. Go out and find your community.
For sure. I agree. Now, we're not going to give you everywhere where you can shop or you can buy used shit, but I think the Goodwill is amazing. Oh, and they've got the Goodwill boutiques, which have the real good shit.
St. Vincent de Paul is my favorite place to go for higher end stuff.
It's amazing. They've got great high end stuff. There's one on West Portal in San Francisco. There's a Goodwill boutique. I went in there. They had friggin' Louis Vuitton shit, cashmere sweaters. I was like, this is amazing. Yeah. I went to antique stores today, bought some stuff.
You never know what you're going to find.
You never know what you're going to find. And you know what? When folks say they don't make them like they used to, it's absolutely right. I do not buy new furniture anymore. I only buy antique because it's made so much better.
And it's already made
and
for
it's beautiful.
You. Lord help me if I have to make another Wayfair thing.
Fuck that shit. And added bonus, it could be haunted, bitch. Woo! Who doesn't love to be haunted by their armoire?
I don't. God damn it. All my shit's going to be haunted now because you said that.
Anyway, go buy used clothes, used shit. You likely will not get haunted, but if you do, write to us and tell us all about it. Anyway, we love you all. Thanks for listening. Give us 5 stars, all that bullshit. We'll see you next week.
Bye.